Hi, I'm Professor Strah.
And I'm Professor Eric Bronson, and you're listening to Prison Breakdown.
2, 3, break!
Eat the spoil is fun, but we're gonna bust out of here.
2, 3, break!
I'm locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
2, 3, break!
I can honestly say I'm a changed man. No danger to society here. God's honest truth.
2, 3, break!
I'm not leaving this cell. I'll get out my way. The right way.
2, 3, break!
Greetings and salutations, but above all, ahoy, dudes! Welcome back to our pirate ship.
Ahoy.
Joining me, as always, is the co-host with the co-most, the big daddy, the head honcho, the big cheese.
Wow.
Eric Bronson.
What an introduction and to such a letdown. Build me up, and then once you know it's me, yeah. Well, ahoy.
Oof. It's like a punch in the gut. And ahoy, as always, to our outstanding producer Britt.
Hello, and ahoy.
Today, we have quite a slate for you. We are going to go through part 2 of our series on felon disenfranchisement, talking about felons losing the right to vote. But first, let me kick it over to Eric, who's, I believe, has some news
We have
for us.
news off the razor wire, and it's a hot one. It's hot news off the razor wire.
Fresh news, hot off the razor wire.
Ow! I just burned myself.
Damn.
It's so
Damn.
hot.
Yeah, well, that razor wire is going to hurt you no matter what, whether it's hot or not. And that's what people don't get. Forget barbed wire. All right, barbed wire is easy. This is razor wire, and it's hot.
Yeah, you don't want a handful of this.
Well,
Ow.
I mean, if it's hot enough, it'll cauterize as it slices, right?
if we want to get technical, I suppose it does.
All right. So coming to us from Australia. That's why this is hot, because it's hot down there. But a desperate search is underway down under for a convict mistakenly released from prison after administrative error. A desperate search is underway for a man.
That's fun. This happens so
yeah,
often.
this is rather common. Normally, this is something that we catch, but Corey Hastings, who's 30 years old, left Long Bay Correctional Complex in Matraville, south side of Sydney, around 1 p.m. on Thursday after an administrative error. He was last seen at a shopping center in East Gardens just before 3 p.m., police said. And officers from Eastern Beaches Police Area Command are conducting an extensive search to try and find Hastings, who was on remand on dangerous driving and other related charges. The poor fella was there for dangerous driving.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's wandering the beaches of the eastern shore of Australia, and I can think of there's not many better places to be than there if you're wandering, because that is a gorgeous place.
Have you been?
Yes, we went to Sydney long ago, just outside of Sydney, to a place called the International College of Management, which is in an old castle overlooking the beach. And so took a group of students there. We lived in the castle for 2 weeks, almost 3 weeks, and we were overlooking the beach in a little town called Manly, just outside of Australia, and we go down to the beach.
It's like it was made for you.
This is right up my alley. If I could do that again, and it was in January, or we actually went in December, so we were there for those huge fireworks display that they have in Sydney that they're famous for. That's just massive. And then we were there for another few weeks, and students had a blast, and it was a great time. And the Australian people are phenomenal. I think it's one of the few places in the world where they don't hate Americans, so they were very welcoming. But obviously, they're prone, just like everybody else, making a few mistakes, and they released an individual from prison who, again, for dangerous driving. I want to know what all falls under dangerous driving. I gotta wonder if that might be something. Well, they were intoxicated in one way or another, because it says in other related charges. So,
I expect like it would be like reckless driving is treated here in the States, where I think it's like if you're going over 20 miles an hour higher than the speed limit, something like that, or like you're the guy weaving through traffic like an asshole.
Right.
Like, I would assume it's something like that.
Well,
I think though, if they make the administrative error for something that is, I assume this is probably their version of a misdemeanor crime. If they make that kind of error, maybe they should have a law where you get to stay out.
Well, here's the other fun thing. Once they do wrangle him and they get him back, do they slap an escape charge on this guy? I mean, it was their error.
It's not warranted.
But he probably knows.
It should be on them.
It should be, but he probably knows now that they're looking for him, right? So,
I guess we can assume so. But is there like is there a manhunt for this guy through Australia? Is that a good use of your resources?
No, but I love that they use the word. A desperate search is underway for a man who was released by them for dangerous driving. I mean, come on. Yeah, I mean, an all points bulletin, announcements goes out for the manhunt for the dangerous driver. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see this being a good use of your resources unless there is no crime in this part of Australia.
Right. No, it's Sydney. There's stuff going on there. It's not the outback where they're only worried about the color of the rocks. But still, I don't know. I wonder. This is one that I really want to follow, because I want to see if they do slap an escape charge on them, because they're going to try and justify it, saying, "Well, you knew we were looking for you." When it was, like you said, it was their error.
Producer Britt, where do you fall in on this?
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously he should be free. He's got like a misdemeanor crime, reckless driving. So what? Let him go.
Yeah.
It's their fault. That's their fault. They let him go. He should just be free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a warning shot for this guy, and maybe the act of being arrested and taken to jail is enough of a deterrent for some people to not want to do that again. You get to see the jail, you get your own mini scared straight, and you're back out.
I love that, the mini scared straight. That's
yeah. I think that like threat of that alone could be enough to deter some people. Like as you know, deterrence is not the most well supported of theories, but I think if were I in his shoes, yes, this would make a huge difference.
Right. I agree.
And seeing the penalties for acting stupid on the road.
But I need to dig in to see what the heck these charges are and find out. But I like I said, I'm going to follow this to see what happens with this guy, because I'm sure he won't be out long. Australia's similar to Europe. There's cameras everywhere, and so I'm sure they'll find him quickly. But I just thought, I saw that and I was like, oh, this is great for us that the administration at this prison just let him go.
Yes, I should also make clear my stance is based on dangerous driving and related charges. If he's got something on record like serial murder or rape, like we do not support him.
We look at the charges, we find out he mowed down a bunch of school children with a bus, and that's dangerous driving in Australia. I don't know. He let the crocodile drive. I don't know. So,
can we talk about Crocodile Dundee movies real quick? Like the first one is fine. Beyond that, they are not good.
No, they're nothing good with those. That first one was fun, but
it was fine.
Cute.
It was a real fish out of water.
Yeah.
But this he should not be an international export. Oh, other question. IHOP, the International House of Pancakes. Have you ever seen one in another country? Because I have not.
That's a good question. They probably are in Canada. I wouldn't doubt it.
I would hope so.
I wouldn't doubt it if they are. And do they have IHOP in Canada? Yes.
All they need is one other country to make it international.
Do.
Yeah,
it's not a lie.
Then it becomes international.
They have them in Ontario. So
yeah, but that's like how the Rhode Island airport is an international airport. It goes to like Montreal or something.
No. Do they? Well, let me ask. Do they have IHOPs in Alaska?
Oh yeah,
really?
Oh, yeah.
What about?
Yeah, I can't say they're great or anything, but
they're not great anywhere. It's not like they get worse once they get to Alaska. They're shitty everywhere. What about Waffle Houses?
No Waffle Houses in Alaska, sadly. I do love a Waffle House.
Yeah, that's when we take our trip down south to Louisiana, we'll stop and get some good wholesome waffle trash. The students will love it.
Oh, I can't wait.
The students are gonna love it.
The International House of Pancakes used to run a promotion where they would it would all you can eat pancakes, and they've got all those different kinds of syrup, so they make it worth your while to I don't know, $15 or whatever it is for all you can eat pancakes. So I challenged my ex-girlfriend to a pancake eating contest, and
you lost.
She lost. No, I won with 7. She got to 5, and then threw off the Technicolor rainbow, as they call it, because it was like all these different syrup colors. She said coming out of her, and she had to pay the check because she lost that wager.
That's great.
Try to beat me in a pancake eating contest. Don't even think about it. I love pancakes.
Yeah, they're the best. They are just the best. Well, last night I go walking into the kitchen around 8:30, and the kiddo says, "Dad, make some pancakes for me." I'm like, what? It's 8:30 because I need some pancakes. So that they of course got some pancakes, but they are phenomenal. But that's one of the ones that I think we need inmates to get more of, is some more pancakes.
I agree, but like good pancakes, and also who's driving the car in your house? Is it you or the kids?
It's definitely the kids. It's not me. I don't drive anything. Nothing. We know who's in charge. My wife and then the kids. I don't make any decisions for myself.
The big daddy is the bottom of the totem pole.
Exactly. I'm the base.
Yeah, you're a good big supportive base for the family.
Exactly.
Well, shall we move on to the main event?
Absolutely. Let's talk about some disenfranchisement here.
All right. So last time we talked about the idea of felon disenfranchisement and what it is. It is a quick refresher for anyone just catching up on this part 2. Felon disenfranchisement means it's a policy that's active in 48 states, all states except for Maine and Vermont. And it means that once you are arrested and charged with a felony, you are, and convicted of a felony, you are not able to vote. And it differs state to state. Some states say you just can't vote while you're in prison or jail after conviction. Some states say you cannot vote after prison, jail, and any related sanctions like probation or parole. Some places make you pay all your fines. It's so different state to state, but that's the main idea. You can't vote after conviction for a felony. And we discussed that it disenfranchises persons of color very disproportionately, and especially in more southern states, it cuts out entire voting blocks of people, where I believe the number is like 11% or 13% of black men in this country are unable to vote. So today we're going to be talking about some studies. We're going to start with a study from 2020 by Torres and colleagues. If we peel back the history on felon disenfranchisement, the origins of it go back to the Greco-Roman era, and it includes this idea of this breach of social contract. If you breach the social contract, you step over the line and you act against society in some way, which is what they considered crimes to be, you could no longer participate in some things such as court cases or serving in the military. And this was supported by our boy Aristotle. Now, moving forward, a fair chunk of time, England common law increased the penalty. They said, okay, so you also have to give up your belongings. You have to give up your inheritance. And you cannot participate in social processes if you're convicted of felony. And then it's brought to America. America, a lot of our laws are loosely based on English law. There's no note of felon disenfranchisement in the Constitution, and it was left up for the states to decide. And so we talked about it, how pre-Civil War, it was Louisiana. And post-Civil War, we saw a quick change in that. And it was like 3/4 of states after the Civil War said, yeah, we're going to implement these felon disenfranchisement laws. And if we look to other countries in the world, the BBC in 2012 did a survey of 20 democracies outside of the United States, and they found that 12 out of 20 states have no voting disenfranchisement. 3 out of the 20 democracies they looked at had strict felon disenfranchisement laws. 4 had partial disenfranchisement laws. But the point here is, like, most other democracies don't use felon disenfranchisement.
Why are we not shocked by that? That other free countries around the world are doing it better than us? You know, there's so many things that where we're stuck trying to screw people over, or keep people from exercising their rights and their freedoms. It's just, it's not shocking at all that these other places are doing it better than we are, and there's no disenfranchisement.
No, the United States is idiosyncratic in how it exercises racism, but also how it's such a pick and choose. It's like the cafeteria Christian of democracy, where they select these very specific points that they think are democratic in some places.
Now so cafeteria Christian, is this at a buffet where they can just go and pick large amounts of, we're going to pick this group to hate, and we'll pick this sin to enforce, and we'll ignore these, because those are the vegetables, the good stuff.
Yeah, like you go to a buffet and just load up on vegetables.
Right, exactly.
More green beans.
So they're talking about, we're going to accept people who are different than us, accept the immigrants, accept all the. No, we're going to leave those vegetables where they're at and go after the red meat and the unlimited amounts of ice cream.
Yeah, no Brussels sprouts for America. So in this study, the author Torres and colleagues, they find that minority population, so the level of minority population in a state and how much support for Trump that we have in a state, they're more likely to influence a state's stance on felon disenfranchisement than anything having to do with offending. Surprise. Right. And we know by now that there's little evidence that felon disenfranchisement will actually deter any kind of recidivism or electoral fraud. It just doesn't happen. And the authors suggest that there's 2 primary explanations for felon disenfranchisement. The first is this retribution idea. You hurt us, you hurt society by offending against us, so we hurt you back. And so the idea is maybe it could reduce the crime rate. We know by now that felon disenfranchisement is not tied to crime rates. The other explanation that they pose is maybe it's a political strategy where felon disenfranchisement can get tough on crime and prevent opponents of conservative parties such as the GOP from voting. And I think that's very much the more likely one based on every study I've ever seen on it.
Yeah.
So the authors suggest, though, that felons typically don't trust the government. But if we restore their rights, what if we help improve that trust? What if we improve that trust and potentially reduce crime by bringing them in, making them feel part of a community? And they use this example of Vermont. Vermont allows their prisoners to vote. They have a lower crime rate, and they have fewer incarcerated individuals overall than most other states. Counterpoint is Florida. So Florida's recidivism rate in 2011 was 33%. But they said it dropped to about 11% amongst persons who were given voting rights back. Now, this is a subject that needs more careful analysis and I'm sure more controls but that is an interesting figure to look at.
Yeah, I think that is a good example though of where we can start from, and maybe the other New England states start following their lead and seeing where we can go from there.
Indeed. So the authors also find that it makes rehabilitation and reintegration harder. Especially, it becomes harder for felons to find meaningful work when they get out. And they find that desperation can lead to recidivism. And the idea of punishment lasts past incarceration for a lot of people. There's so many after effects of incarceration. There's social shaming, harder to get jobs, harder to find housing, harder to get public benefits, harder to get public housing, harder to get school loans. There's all these invisible punishments that we don't account for very much and you don't hear enough about, but are dogging people, sometimes for years and years after getting out. So punishment lasts well after incarceration, leading to the stigma and making it so much harder for people to reintegrate into society. We know also that not all felons are going to vote the same way. When people enacted these tough on crime laws, it was often through these bipartisan measures. And criminal justice reform is often bipartisan as well. If you look at it from the left, it's done for more humanitarian reasons. If you look at it from the right, it's done for more cost savings type reasons, because they see we're spending so much on prisons. Prisons have such a price tag. But the conclusion of the study tells us that felon disenfranchisement doesn't decrease recidivism. It doesn't decrease voting fraud, crime rate, anything like that.
Nor does it impact the price of running all of our prisons, right? It's one of those things. Right.
No.
So it's amazing the justifications that we have for it. When we come down to, if we would just have the politicians come out and say, look, this is purely punitive. That's it. That we're just being, we're just being punitive here. We're just trying to be extreme, and this is pure retribution, because nothing else works as a justification for it. I mean, being punitive and using it as an evil for evil, eye for an eye type. That's it. That's the only excuse that works.
Yeah, let's stop pretending it's anything else. So let's move on to our next study by Fletcher, called Living Dead in the United States, Felon Disenfranchisement and White Privilege.
That's an ominous title.
In this study. It is. It's a good title.
Yeah.
It's strong. It gives you an idea of what we're looking at here. So felon disenfranchisement, as Fletcher asserts it's historically and currently been used to prevent black people from exercising their right to vote. And through white privilege, people often look at, it's not our problem. And Fletcher says felon disenfranchisement is constitutional because it does not explicitly discriminate against people of color. And this goes back to some of the problems we see with like colorblind policies. I don't see race, when it actually is being used to discriminate against people while pretending it's not, like what we were just talking about.
Right. And it's nice for people to make themselves feel better when they say, I don't see race. That's one of those, hey, I'm going to pat myself on the back. I don't see race. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Going to feel good about being
it makes people feel good.
It can be a social justice warrior by saying, I don't see race. Well, if you don't see race, how about the right? How do you? I mean, do you see the impact race has for individuals? The social structures that are there that do have an impact on people of different color, or do you not see that either?
Yeah. It's the people supporting like the equality, not equity idea, and whereas equity, like let's raise all ships to be at the same level, and it's like completely ignoring any kind of historic measures that have been used to discriminate people that are still keeping people down, like redlining, for example, and generational wealth. It sucks. So we see that in more modern eras, it's roughly like over 7% of African Americans are disenfranchised, while only 1.8% of non-African Americans are disenfranchised, which tells us something. That's a very notable number. And it's similar to like the Jim Crow literacy tests. They did not explicitly discriminate, but they had these very racially discriminate results between white people and non-white people. And it's found that white people should participate in dismantling felon disenfranchisement to avoid this white supremacist society. Now, let's move on to our next study, just called Felon Disenfranchisement by Dem Leitner in 2019 from the University of Memphis Law Review. In this review, Dem Leitner says there's about 19 million felons, either currently or previously incarcerated, and conditions are going to vary state to state. Some disenfranchise probationers, parolees, some make the offenders pay all fines, fees, etc. So Dem Leitner finds that recidivism decreases when we re-enfranchise people. Felon disenfranchisement, a lot of people don't fully consider it a penalty because it's not a criminal sanction, but it's a civil sanction. It doesn't occur through court processes, but it's automatic. And the crazy part is it's not even tied to the severity of crime, besides just if it's a felony. But felonies, not all felonies are created equal either.
Right.
There's a huge difference between like felony burglary and felony murder, right? Like those are,
right.
They could not be more different.
No, and I mean, that's kind of like,
it's not a deterrence.
Kind of that same thing we were talking about earlier with the dangerous driving from Australia. You're 100% correct where, you know, some of the felonies out there, if we can throw in there the third strikes law, you know, the 3 strikes and you're outlaw, that third strike can be, I mean, it can be something simple larceny. You know, petty theft can be a felony if it's a certain number of crimes. And man, it's just that all crimes are not created equal.
Yeah, but what we're doing is we're taking this one size fits all t-shirt and we're saying, hey, all felons wear this. And that's messed up because 99% plus of these crimes are not voting fraud and therefore have nothing to do with democratic processes.
Exactly. You know, and it's just amazing when we talk about this democratic process. You know, the folks who should be battling for us so that we can ensure that democratic process is moving the way it's supposed to and everybody has access to it are the ones that are trying to create the laws to block us from it.
Yes, absolutely. But we can say firmly, this doesn't even fall under it. We know it's not a deterrent. It doesn't incapacitate people. It doesn't rehabilitate people. It doesn't restore people. And it's not retributive because retribution, the whole idea of retribution is eye for an eye. So you steal from me, I steal from you, that kind of thing. So because it's one size fits all, there's not really an element of retribution to the whole thing.
It's very much there is an element of incapacitation, but it's just incapacitation from the democratic process.
Yeah, but I agree with that. But I don't know that actually has any place in punishment theory.
No, of course not. Of course not. No, but so much of what we do here in the States doesn't. But that's the only one that fits, right?
Yeah. Totally agree. It's messy and it's half-assed. It just doesn't make any sense for why we do it.
Well, I just want to know when we say something is half-assed. Mm-hmm. Which half? Is it left, right, top, bottom?
Oh, I'm a left butt kind of guy. How about you?
Oh, okay. You prefer the left cheek?
Yeah, I think you're the right cheek of this podcast.
Right. I think I might be the whole ass. We're gonna let Brett be the right cheek, and I'll be the whole ass.
You're the asshole, I think is what you meant to say.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So felon disenfranchisement is still an issue. It is confusing for felons to figure out how to regain their rights in many states. And if, say, I'm moving between states, like say I'm a felon who's been convicted in Vermont, but I want to move to Wyoming, that's confusing for me to even try to figure out how to maintain my right to vote, or if I even can. There's also like a huge misunderstanding of state voting laws. For people, the level of conviction being felony versus misdemeanor. Some people convicted of misdemeanors don't know, do I have the right to vote when they get out? Who do you even go to ask? And as we talked about last time, there have been stories of people who voted when they weren't allowed to, that didn't know they weren't allowed to vote. These people had received voter registration cards and they end up getting prosecuted for voting fraud. That's a mess. Let's stop that. Let's knock it off. Let's make clearer processes, clearer routes for people to figure out their voting rights. And if they're able to vote, and getting back into society, getting back into democratic processes in their communities. Now, our next study comes to us from Morris in 2021. A study called Neighborhoods and Felony Disenfranchisement, the Case of New York City. Pretty good dramatic one as well. Now, Morris,
right.
Morris talks about these lost voters, and he defines lost voters as disenfranchised people who previously had voted, and says that neighborhoods with lost voters, they end up voting significantly less than similar neighborhoods, especially black neighborhoods. And they found in 2017, there were only 10 of the NYPD's 77 precincts that had more than 25% of all the arrests for felony charges. So this is probably not surprising, because we end up seeing like persons of lower socioeconomic status clustered in certain areas. And in New York City specifically, Todd Clear and others in the past have talked about $1 million blocks. And do one of you want to explain what $1 million blocks are to the audience? We'll do an episode on this at some point.
I was going to say, $1 million blocks, aren't those poor neighborhoods in New York City?
Those are neighborhoods in New York City where we're spending more than $1 million to incarcerate people just on this block. Not a good use of taxpayer resources. It breaks down communities further by taking people out of the communities. These are mothers, brothers, fathers, sisters. Like, these are people in the community, and by removing people from a community, it breaks down the fabric of the community, making the community potentially even worse and more likely for crime to occur there. People trust each other less. There's less social capital and less of what we call collective efficacy, which is this resource potential between neighbors to want to keep the neighborhood safe, in short. Now, with these neighborhoods, the 10 of the 77 precincts that had more than 25% of arrests, we find in these areas, residents have poor mental health, poor physical health. We find labor markets are disrupted, social networks are disrupted. And all of this affects residents' willingness to reach out to local governments for help. If I see people around me getting arrested and taken away, and at this point, you probably know people in your area who have been arrested, you become less likely to want to contact the government. It displaces trust in the government.
You know what's interesting is you went through those characteristics. Those same characteristics are evident in dramatically different places in America, such as Appalachia. If you go down that list again, it's just, obviously there's no population density, especially when you compare it to New York, but every single one of those things, those characteristics that you mentioned, you find in Appalachia, that distrust of government, absence of, good jobs, good health care, food, when you, all of those things, it's just characteristics of poverty in America, whether it's an urban setting or a rural setting.
Yes, absolutely. And inevitably, these are going to be the areas that are most heavily policed and have the highest rates of arrests, and it doesn't help out the community. There's a real tipping point to arrests where prison effectiveness in terms of reducing crime, prisons, like the incarceration rate is not tied to the crime rate, as we know by now, where we passed that tipping point a long time ago where we are not really taking crime down. And at some points it can be very counterproductive to enforce even smaller crimes in areas because we're just removing more people from the community that's holding this community together. You take out more adult, especially voting age people, that's less supervision for the youth. And with less supervision for the youth, there's more trouble that the youth are going to get into. It's not great.
No. I mean, it's just, it's funny because it just seems like it's such an obvious answer, to this, and we just ignore it because it polls well.
Yes. And so we find other problems in these areas. We also find that in New York City, stop and frisk laws have affected Black and Latinx persons more significantly than white people. And we find more contraband on white people, but Black and Latinx persons are more likely to be stopped and frisked. And a 2018 study finds that it's almost 50% of incarcerated persons in New York are non-Hispanic Black, despite being only 14.3% of the voting age population of New York City. So we see these really disproportionate rates of Black people being taken out of the community. There's another effect too, where because there's more Black people disenfranchised, it leads to eligible Black voters being less likely to vote. And it ends up with this geographically concentrated effect where if people in my community aren't able to vote and I'm a Black citizen there, I may be less likely to vote. Voting is social. It's influenced by social networks and social ties, and those factors are going to influence my willingness to vote.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the thing. I think we can see a lot of those factors just play right into it. And, again, if it can disenfranchise one way or the other, whether it's through some type of policy or litigation, we can find other ways for those things to occur.
For sure. Let's move on to our next study by Kane and Parker from 2019. In this study, they talk about how in 2018, Florida ended lifetime disenfranchisement. And currently, we have Iowa and Kentucky are the only states that use this lifetime disenfranchisement practice unless the governor steps forward and personally restores your voting rights. For a lot of these states, you can appeal, and then the governor can restore it. But as we've seen in the past, the governor's decision to restore your voting rights, it's often pretty arbitrary. And we have seen that governors in both Iowa and Kentucky have shown opposition to disenfranchisement, and legislators have debated bills to weaken the policies as they stand. There's a strong consensus against doing away with lifetime felon disenfranchisement for nonviolent first-time offenders, but we are still waiting for things to change.
Yeah, and I'd say if Beshear can't get this taken care of while he's in office, I think it's going to be a long time before Kentucky changes that at all, because he's about as left-leaning as that state's willing to go. And if it's not something that he can get changed as the governor, I can't see anybody making major changes to disenfranchisement or anything that benefits, offenders at all. The one thing I could see is the state changing the laws on marijuana because it just grows wild on the side of the road there. But I don't even know if they let people go if they did, decriminalize marijuana. But it's just anything if it's not punitive, the voters of Kentucky are not going to support it.
Does it really grow on the side of the road?
Oh yeah, it grows wild.
That's crazy.
So why you think it moving?
Is sweet Kentucky bluegrass? Is that like a euphemism for weed? Because I've heard of that before.
So, well, here's the thing. So for a long time, tobacco was considered the number one cash crop in Kentucky. And when you get down there, you find out that it's just the few rows on the outside of the field that are actually tobacco, and that the inside of the field is nothing but marijuana because they make so much more money off of it. Now that things are legalized, decriminalized throughout so much of the country, I am very curious to see how the marijuana growth and distribution out of Kentucky is going, because it was all over the place in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and it was without a doubt the number one cash crop coming out of Kentucky. But yeah, because it was all over the place, the seeds would end up blowing out of people's fields and ending up, and you'd be driving and you're like, oh, what was that? And then there's a plant growing right on the side of the road. It's just kind of the perfect conditions in soil for marijuana plants there in Kentucky, similar to corn and tobacco plants.
Very interesting. And I had no idea. Does Kentucky even have medical legalized?
I don't think so. I have to look that up real quick. I don't. They're much like everything else.
They want to be socially regressive when it comes to everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
He signed. Yeah. Okay. So there is a medical
Okay. Very good.
cannabis program effective January 1, 2025.
Oh, great.
But
So that is a Bashir move, maybe.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. He signed it in March 31st, 23. So, but that's it. So you got to go find your card, and I got a week back, and then you can get your medical card.
Yeah.
How long have you had a week back? Right. About a week back.
That's good. Hey,
Old three Stooges stupid humor.
no. Eric, this is gold. Don't sell yourself short. Now, we were talking about Kentucky and Iowa being the only states to have lifetime disenfranchisement. If we look at the numbers, so in 2016, as of 2016, Kentucky had 312,000 people barred from voting for life. And if we look around that time, the governor restored rights for 981 people during 3 years as the governor. That's a very small number. That's a pittance compared to the 312,000 who are barred from voting for life. And there are disenfranchisements imposed on all felons, regardless of the severity of the crime. If we look over to Iowa... go for it.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's such a small percentage of individuals that have been locked up, that are, back out on the streets in Kentucky, they're being impacted by what, has been a long-standing policy and law about them having access to voting. And they're very well, these are contributing members to society now. Right? They've gone out, they've gotten jobs, they've stayed clean, they haven't been committing crimes, and they're still not allowed to have a say in their government.
And the people who get rights restored is less than a third of 1%. That is very, very few people. If we look over to Iowa, we have, as of 2016, 52,000 people were disenfranchised, and in 2015, only 17 people went through the process attempting to apply to have their rights restored. So also not great. We need more work on this. Now, if we look to the survey of the public's opinion, so organization YouGov did a survey, and they found that people are resistant to completely end felon disenfranchisement. There's about 20% of people out there who are in favor of permanently banning felons from voting. Some people are hesitant to allow voting for people on probation and parole. There's about 33% who favor no voting for people on probation and parole. And 27% of people are actually in favor of letting felons vote while incarcerated. So at least that's somewhat promising that we have slightly over a quarter. Now, the survey, which had almost 2,000 participants, when people were asked what the purpose is of felon disenfranchisement, 49% said, oh yeah, felon disenfranchisement is used as a punishment for committing crimes. And 51% said it's used to make sure that people have adequate morals and cognitive abilities to help decide elections. This tells me that Americans really aren't clear on the purpose of these laws.
Well, and that's the thing. Who the hell is to decide what are adequate morals? That just makes me want to vomit. But adequate morals, that's horrible to say that because somebody committed a crime and they did some time that they don't have adequate moral. I mean, everybody commits crimes. It's just that, majority of people don't get caught, or if they do get caught, they have the network to get themselves out of trouble. And to say that these folks, have less morals, or, their morals are unacceptable, and so therefore they can't vote, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like no two people in any room are going to have the exact same morals. If we quiz people on different issues, it's going to be very hard to find any kind of parity between people. And let me push even further though, and like adequate cognitive abilities. What does that mean? Like that's like the idea
Right.
of using that like poll testing that I was talking about, or some kind of like literacy testing in order to vote. And it's not necessarily fair in that it is excluding people for like, if you are part of a democracy, you should get to vote. How about that?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great if that's the way things were?
One person, one vote. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, I probably shouldn't, based on that definition, I probably shouldn't be able to vote with the adequate IQ.
No, you've been hit on the head too many times. Sorry.
Right. Exactly. Or what the hell? We have people who can't vote because of that, but yet one of the guys who's running for president is, this, our El Presidente Cheeto, and with what's going on in his head, and he's allowed to be president. I mean, come on. Can we disenfranchise him?
Orange man bad. Honestly, I had students bring that up in class. Like, shouldn't we be able to disenfranchise him? He's facing 91 charges across 4 different criminal cases, and like as much as part of me wants to say yes, it's also we need due process. Like he's still innocent until proven guilty of these crimes, and we need some kind of due process in place. And I think that's important.
Yeah, no, that's true. He does need his day in court. We just need it to happen.
Yeah. Just full speed ahead. Let's go forward with it. So 2 more studies I've got. The next one is by one of my favorites, Chris Eugen. So this one is Eugen, Manza, and Behrens. Chris Eugen is like a hero amongst criminologists, and how I see him. He's phenomenal. He's done so much good work on felon disenfranchisement. Eugen and Manza together put out this book, Locked Out, that is all about felon disenfranchisement. Cannot recommend it to the listeners enough. It's very good. Now, in this study,
I think it's important. I think it's important to point out that he is a sociologist.
Yes, but he does.
Yeah.
He works.
It's important to understand that he's a sociologist. I just want to make sure we claim him in the proper. Let's put him in the proper camp. Don't try and steal him from us.
I agree. That's what
exactly.
This podcast is all about. Is adequate representation.
Yeah. There's some CJ appropriation going on.
I think he should be claimed. He's done enough for criminology that I think he's honorarily one of us.
Yeah.
But by us, I mean my team.
You can't have him.
Chris Eugen, if you're out there, we love your work, and come on the pod, man.
Yeah.
So Eugen, Manza, and Behrens did this 2013 study where they interviewed 33 people with felony convictions. And from their results, they find that the right to vote is this fundamental component of people developing a pro-social identity when they get out. And they find that being restricted from voting processes just further reinforces this us versus them dichotomy between felons and greater society, where they feel like they become othered. They become this them that's unwanted by the rest of us in society. And it makes people feel like outsiders that don't have as much of a solid stake in their community. And the authors reinforce this idea that civic reintegration can help contribute to forming an identity as a law-abiding citizen, which can actually aid in desistance from crime. So good things all the way around if we are to restore the right to vote. Not necessarily good things if we take away the right to vote. We, so far in this podcast and the last one, we cannot make a coherent case for why people should not have the right to vote.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things I think that's important for folks to understand. If we want these individuals to come out of prison and be reintegrated in society, we already have enough rules that they have to follow when we're talking about probation, supervision, parole, supervision, any of those things where an individual is being watched. Their rights as U.S. citizens should not be one of them that we're monitoring and keeping them from participating in a democracy. It's, if we give them this back, that might be one of the things that helps them reintegrate in society, saying, hey, I've got a stake in conformity now. I'm part of this process. I helped elect this person, or I whatever it might be. It's all part of them being back in society.
Yeah, stakes in conformity. It's like if we look to criminology and social bond theory, this attachment that people have to their communities and to the institutions in their communities. That's this like pro-social factor that can, if you have that attachment, maybe it helps insulate you from committing crime.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
It can't hurt in terms of reintegration.
No, not one bit.
So our final study comes to us from Miller and Spillane. It's a 2012 study where they use interviews with 54 disenfranchised citizens in Florida. And here they find that 15% of the sample saw their inability to vote as an impediment to reintegration. Over a quarter of the sample, it was like 26%, saw restrictions on voting as this real obstacle to reintegration. I don't know what the difference really would be there between impediment and obstacle. I guess obstacle would be bigger. Like an impediment would be like a rock in your way, where an obstacle would be like a boulder in your way.
Or would it be like monkey bars?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Switch up the analogy entirely. Either way, bad. And they find that people felt like they couldn't do anything when it came to voting on issues to improve the community or create job opportunities. And 39% of the respondents actually saw their inability to vote as connected to their perceived ability to remain law-abiding because they felt pushed out of their communities. So, in conclusion of all this mountain of evidence we have about felon disenfranchisement, it doesn't help. If we ask the question, who is this helping? When we have policies, they should in some way help the people, right? This is not a policy for anybody. It is simply an exclusionary policy against people. And that in itself should be enough of a case. We can just close the book on this stupid set of laws and maybe we move forward.
Right. There's no benefit to anyone in society with this, with these laws in any way. You can't even play devil's advocate here other than saying, hey, these people did something wrong one time and got caught and convicted, and therefore they should never be allowed to vote again, or they should only be allowed to vote after so many years on parole. Whatever it might be, they're awful laws.
Yeah, and even I've talked to like students or just other people who have said, well, maybe if you murder, you shouldn't be able to vote. Okay, why? What do the two have to do with each other? Well, I just think murderers shouldn't be able to vote because you took a life. That's an emotional argument. Let's break it down to the data. Let's break it down to how does this help or hurt society as a whole? And it doesn't help. So if we look at the data points, just boiled down to it, the simplest arguments, while still contextualizing everything, the purity of the ballot box argument is horseshit and doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Yeah, there's nothing pure about our electoral process. I mean, come on. It's a big mess.
Yeah. And so let's stop pretending there's any purity of the ballot box. We've all committed crimes. As Eric said, I believe last time, it's a matter of who gets caught and who doesn't.
Right.
And that sucks. Like you and I probably have committed some of those, like our pal Corey down in Australia. I might have dangerously driven 20 miles over the speed limit at some point in my life.
Every day when you drive home from the university, right?
I can't wait to get out of there. Pedal to the middle, baby. I see Eric walking toward my car. I get the hell out of there.
Right, exactly. Like, no, stay. Let's go talk to the students. Gone. Well,
all right. I think that wraps up our segments on felon disenfranchisement. Do either of you have anything to add?
No.
Producer Britt, were you familiar with these laws, and what did you learn about felon disenfranchisement today?
Yeah, I was well familiar with that. Yeah, I don't know what I'm super tired right now, so I've just been spacing out for the past like 45 minutes. So what I learned today is producer Britt needs a nap.
Okay, Eric, do you need to go, or are you able to stick around another like 10 minutes for movie minute?
Oh no, I'm good for 10 more minutes. Are we doing our movie minute?
Yeah, I watched it last night. That's one of the reasons I'm so tired.
Oh, okay.
I'm sacrificing sanity for you people.
Movie minute. 60 seconds with producer Britt to talk about movies.
It's movie minute. Let's put 60 seconds on the clock. So last week, Judge Bronson here sentenced me to watch How to Be a Serial Killer from 2008. Let's get into it. I'm a little torn on this movie. On one hand, it's kind of an interesting concept. A man teaches a young protege how to be a serial killer and improve his life in the process. And it's not given the absolute worst execution possible. The acting is serviceable, and the two leads have some decent chemistry that reads as off-the-charts homoerotic. On the other hand, the direction is nothing to write home about, the script is pretty miserable, and the pacing makes me feel incredibly long. Like this 90 minutes felt like 3 hours. I kept on looking at it, even though I don't even wear a watch. I think the biggest flaw in this movie, however, is the lack of emotion and humanity it has. I'm not sure, even after watching the film, if I'm supposed to sympathize with any of the leads or protagonists. I think I hate them, and I'm not sure if I was supposed to. The sound mixing also needs to be pointed out is pretty terrible, with the music overwhelming the dialogue very often. And the music is all this awful combination of genres I can only qualify as pornography funk rock. Overall, I did not learn how to be a serial killer, but I did learn how to have homoerotic tension with another man, which honestly would have already taught a graduate level course on. So ultimately, I didn't learn much. Not great. Not even that good. 2 out of 5 soups.
Two. Is that one of your lowest ratings? Is that your lowest movie minute rating so far?
No, I think Cage Heat 2 got and also Let's Go to Prison only got lower ratings than those.
Oh yeah, oof.
Okay. All right. That might be something we need to do. Is we need to keep track of, have them rank ordered where he's putting things.
I log them all on Letterboxd, so I can do that pretty easily.
Oh yeah, see producer Britt's Letterboxd reviews at Media Dungeon on Letterboxd.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Now, let's open the floor for questions. First, are we supposed to sympathize with the serial killers as the protagonists in the film?
I think you're kind of supposed to. Like the main guy is kind of like I don't know. He's shot is like charming, but I didn't really get that from him because I don't know. It's like it was made in 2008, and so like this guy has a very like what I can only call like a dig.com affect or like a chive, the chive.com type affect. The guy's wearing like a top hat in, while giving a presentation and stuff like that. Like this dude needs to be bullied.
I think a top hat could be your new thing. Like, top hat to class, my friend.
Yeah, there we go. I like it. Oh, that's good.
I also want to ask about the sound mixing and this. Did you call it pornography funk rock?
That is correct. Pornography funk rock.
Tell us about this. What is the genre?
It's it's just that boom to go wow wow kind of.
No.
But it's like in like a dark comedy, horror comedy kind of thing with like people getting killed and stuff, and so it's it's very out of place. And the first time it happens, you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. They're using like funny porn music in this like serial killer film, but it loses its charm very quickly. Like the second time it plays, you're like, oh, this is going to be the whole soundtrack, isn't it?
Does it feel like the Casio keyboard preset songs for like a low budget film? Is that the idea?
No. I mean, it's like an actual band playing like some funk rock, but it's like it doesn't feel like it's in the right genre. I mean, it really feels like it should just be in pornography.
Oh, okay.
No.
That's great.
Well, it's good to hear this was such a rough experience. Now, Bronson, do you have any questions about the film?
No, I don't think so. I'm sorely disappointed that you did not learn anything about how to be a serial killer. I mean, was there anything on how to dispose of a body that seemed to be at least a little bit of an education, or no, nothing? Huh?
No, I mean, because like we all know the best ways to get rid of a body. I mean, we've all got imaginations and common sense, and so
the best way is to put them in the Everglades.
Yeah, like either put them in the forest, or if you have a bunch of like quick lime or something, like burying them in the ground, pouring all that over them, letting them dissolve.
Right.
Weighing them in the bottom of a large body of water. There's lots of obvious ways to get rid of a body, but yeah, the movie didn't really. It wasn't a great instruction set, I think, was what disappointed me.
It didn't.
That's your chief complaint.
Well,
yeah, it is.
he wanted the movie to come with a workbook and some PowerPoint slides.
It wasn't quite academic enough for my taste.
That's great.
Now, I wonder. I'd like to see some kind of research on this. I wonder if you'd have to get in touch with serial killers in prison for this. But I wonder if the proliferation of serial killer media has made people, I guess, more adept at serial killing. Like people know what to do with body disposal better. People know who to target better. There's all these factors that are probably altered by the amount of serial killer media out there, be it podcasts, movies, books, whatever it is, blogs. I'm sure that some serial killers must have learned from some of this and become more adept at crimes.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, Eric, do you have any knowledge on this?
I would. Well, that's what I'm sure one of the great things is when we have guest speakers on campus, or we have some of the detectives come in, or individuals who have really spent time looking at this. When they come in and they drop those little juicy tidbits on how to get away with crime, I think we're learning better about what to do. Like you said, how to get away, how to dump a body. What are the best ways to do all that stuff? Where, the cleanest way to slice somebody so you don't have that excess blood. I mean, what's better? What are the products that we can use to clean up blood better? Yeah, I think that you would think that we're getting better, but I don't know that we're outpacing the Carla Sue Marriotts of the world, our forensic scientists that are looking into this and teaching our students how to detect this evidence at a crime scene. So
that's true.
I don't know.
But if we don't know where the crime scenes are, that's
there we
how
go.
it could outpace them. Yeah, right. Like it's about like location, burial area, that kind of thing. So I guess we did learn something here today from how to be a serial killer.
Yes.
I guess so.
Now, after careful review of the evidence, I have decided to grant your appeal. And Judge Bronson's been overruled here. I think these are court terms. So your sentence has been changed, and you are sentenced to watch the film Milli Vanilli from 2023.
Oh, it's gonna be awful. So I grew up on them, right? That was during my time when I was a
Raised
kiddo.
on a diet of Milli Vanilli and
Oh my
corn
god!
chips.
And they were played constantly, and then it was amazing the complete disappearance of them from radio when it was announced that, hey, we weren't actually singing that. It was these people, and we're just the dancers and the lip syncers. It was, oh, wow. But
Yeah. Eric, give it a look though. I think it's on Paramount if you have that one.
no, not that fancy.
Yeah. Well, nor am I. I have Brit server.
Is that where it's at? Because I
Yeah.
think I have Brit server too.
And I look forward to hearing what you think about it.
Cool.
All right. I think that's the podcast. Let's get out of here. If you have listened, if you like us, please give us 5 stars on whatever your favorite podcast app might be. Please please rate, please subscribe. You know what? That's I sound desperate there. It's too much of a plea. Just rate, and subscribe if you feel.
And if you don't like us, give us 5 damn stars.
Yeah, just leave us alone. 5 stars, and then you never have to think about us.
5 stars and get the hell out of here.
Speaking of which, let's get the hell out of here.
Lights out.